Welcome to today's deep dive. We are we are so glad you're here
Yeah, really glad to have you.
because we know you are someone who genuinely loves to learn. You want to optimize your life, and you're constantly looking for ways to improve your mental framework. But let's be totally honest. You do not want to get bogged down by endless information overload.
Right. Who has the time?
Exactly. So we've taken a massive stack of research and well, we did the heavy lifting for you. To start us off, I want you to set a scene in your mind. It's a scenario that is probably highly relatable.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
You have just finished a long, demanding day. Your cognitive tax has completely peaked. We're talking about that allostatic load, which is a term that researchers use to describe the literal physical wear and tear that your body accumulates from just managing chronic stress all day long.
The physical toll is very real.
It really is. The tension is palpable. You are sitting at your desk, and your hand is hovering right there over it. You have a choice to make. Do you reach for your noise-canceling headphones to blast a carefully curated playlist? Or do you close your eyes and try to sit in pure, unadulterated silence?
It's a choice we all make almost unconsciously, every single day. And based on the stack of comparative analyses and clinical research we've been reviewing, it is a choice that fundamentally alters your brain chemistry.
Wow.
But right away, we need to establish the core thesis of all this data. This isn't a binary conflict between the distraction of music and the discipline of meditation. It's a false dichotomy that the wellness industry sometimes pushes.
Right, like you have to be either a chaotic music junkie or a Zen monk.
Precisely. The research points to a concept of functional alignment. You do not have to choose one over the other as a permanent lifestyle. Both listening to music and practicing meditation are distinct, highly tactical tools sitting on a single spectrum of well-being.
They just do different things.
Exactly. They serve entirely different primary purposes for your nervous system.
Okay, let's unpack this because we really need to look at the immediate power of music first. In the literature, music is essentially classified as an acute intervention. It is the ultimate immediate tool because the barrier to entry is basically zero.
Right, there's no learning curve.
You don't need years of special training, you don't need to read an instruction manual, and you certainly don't need to sit perfectly still on a cushion. You literally just press play.
And the why behind that immediate relief is deeply biological. Music provides what we call tactical emotional shifting. When you listen to a track you genuinely enjoy, it acts as an incredibly potent external sensory stimulus.
Like an instant jolt.
Within seconds, it triggers the release of specific neurotransmitters. You get a rush of dopamine, which drives feelings of pleasure and reward, alongside a boost in serotonin, which elevates your overall mood.
So it's a chemical reaction.
Completely. Clinically speaking, putting on the right track doesn't just make you feel good subjectively, it instantly lowers physiological markers of stress. We see heart rates drop and blood pressure stabilize almost on contact.
One of the sources provided this incredibly memorable analogy that really stuck with me. It suggested that using music is like changing the weather of your internal landscape.
I love that analogy.
Right. When you lack the time or the mental energy for a deep atmospheric shift and you just need a quick emotional pivot, music is the fan that cools down the room right when you are overheating.
It is a highly effective mood regulator for that exact reason, and it goes beyond just the internal biology. We also have to consider the social dimension.
The connection aspect.
Yes, music is the bridge to the collective human experience. It validates our emotions. It acts as the shared universal language, whether a culture is processing collective grief or experiencing transcendent joy. It forms our cultural identity and gives us a sense of belonging.
Makes us feel seen.
Exactly. It makes us feel understood by the outside world in a way that pure internal introspection sometimes just cannot achieve.
I completely get that. When I've had a brutal week, putting on my specific guilty pleasure playlist feels like a lifeline. But looking at the sources, is there a risk that I'm just masking my feelings? Like, if music is this incredible fast-acting Band-Aid, what happens when we need to actually heal the wound?
That is the critical nuance the research highlights. Because music is an external sensory stimulus, it operates as a high-intensity emotional catalyst. And because it is so incredibly effective at validating our feelings, it can easily become a crutch.
A dependency.
Yes. If you are constantly blasting happy, upbeat music specifically to avoid feeling a sense of sadness or anxiety, you are actually dealing with the root emotion. You're just drowning it out.
Or doing the opposite, right? Wallowing in it.
Yes, exactly. Listening to highly evocative, melancholy music when you are already down can trigger severe rumination. You get stuck replaying specific painful memories or cyclical thoughts because the music is keeping you anchored to that emotional state.
It traps you there.
Ultimately, the danger is that over-relying on music to manage your mood can create an external dependence. Your happiness becomes contingent on having the right soundtrack playing.
So if music is the Band-Aid, that must be where meditation steps in as the physical therapy. The sources refer to meditation as the mental gym. It is the direct, active path for restructuring your relationship with your own mind. It's a skill you build, not just a temporary relief you consume.
What's fascinating here is how this contrasts with our earlier weather analogy. If music is a fan that temporarily changes the weather in a single room, meditation is the painstaking, unglamorous work of going down to the basement and rewiring the entire building's climate control system.
It's the heavy lifting.
It is a cumulative practice of cognitive restructuring.
Yeah.
It might not offer the immediate, soaring dopamine high of a massive musical crescendo, but it addresses the very structural foundations of how you experience reality.
But let's be real for a second. Isn't meditation incredibly frustrating for someone who is already stressed out? I know for a fact that when my brain is feeling completely chaotic, the idea of just sitting in silence sounds like absolute torture, not therapy.
That is the most common and most valid piece of friction people experience, and the clinical literature acknowledges it. The goal of meditation isn't to immediately feel peaceful. It is about building capacity.
Capacity for what exactly?
Meditation creates a structural pause in your brain. It trains you to observe your feelings without immediately reacting to them. You are developing the capacity to create a space between a trigger, like a stressful email, and your response to it. You learn to observe your own anger or your own chaotic thoughts without being entirely consumed by them.
Which builds what the research calls inner directedness. You are constructing a stable internal center. Your baseline of happiness becomes independent of external circumstances. You don't need everything to go perfectly at the office, and you don't need your favorite song playing to feel okay.
And that internal shift is entirely backed by structural brain changes. The studies in our stack heavily focus on the default mode network, or the DMN.
Let's break that down, because the DMN sounds like a router setting.
It does sound like one.
But it's actually crucial to how we process our own identity, right?
Think of the default mode network like a smartphone running a dozen background apps at all times. It is the area of your brain associated with mind wandering, rumination, and the constant construction of your sense of self or ego.
Just constantly draining the battery.
Precisely. When you aren't actively focused on a task, the DMN is running in the background, draining your mental battery by worrying about the future or regretting the past. Now, music can interact with the DMN by inducing what we call flow states, where your sense of self temporarily fades and those background apps shift toward a positive focus.
So the music kind of hijacks the background apps and forces them to play a happier tune.
It's a wonderful reprieve. But meditation actually works to close those background apps entirely over the long term. It systematically quiets the DMN, it reduces the ego, stops the endless mental chatter. And this is critical. It has been shown to slow aging-related mental decline by building profound meta-awareness. You are no longer wasting cognitive energy on constant self-referential thought.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When we dig into the clinical data provided in these sources, we see that these two practices, as different as they are, actually share some incredible cheat codes for the brain.
They do.
The research shows that clinically, both listening to music and practicing meditation lower cortisol levels and significantly reduce physical and mental fatigue.
The clinical overlaps are remarkable, and they show up in populations experiencing extreme stress. Let's look closely at the data from a 2016 study on older adults who were experiencing subjective cognitive decline.
So people dealing with memory issues.
Right. And this wasn't just asking people how they felt. It was a structured intervention. These were individuals dealing with real fear about memory loss, waking up groggy, struggling with focus. The researchers found that both interventions, a structured music listening program and a meditation program, significantly improved the participants' mood and, critically, their sleep quality. That's huge. By lowering that baseline anxiety, both practices acted as powerful tools for cognitive support.
And there was another fascinating study in the stack that mirrored those results, an 8-week program specifically designed for breast cancer survivors. These are patients often dealing with immense emotional stress and the lingering effects of what's commonly called chemo brain.
A very heavy allostatic load.
Yes. The researchers had one group practice mantra-based meditation and another group listen to classical music.
And the mechanics of the results are what we really need to highlight. Both groups saw significant improvements in their verbal memory and their verbal fluency.
Which is wild to think about. Why would listening to classical music or repeating a mantra improve your ability to remember words?
Because both practices effectively reduce the cognitive load of stress. When your brain isn't expending massive amounts of energy managing trauma and anxiety, it frees up processing power for memory and cognition. Both interventions work to support their healing, improving their perceived cognition and overall quality of life.
If we look at both of those studies, what is the ultimate conclusion we should be drawing?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the meta takeaway from all this clinical evidence is very clear. Music is slightly more practical and perhaps more effective for immediate relief and acute stress reduction. It has a distinct edge when you're overwhelmed in the moment and need instant soothing.
But meditation is the long game.
Yes, meditation provides the sustained depth. It provides the long-term structural resilience that actually changes how your brain processes that stress in the first place.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, in your actual daily routine? The greatest aha moment from synthesizing these sources is that the whole music versus meditation debate is entirely manufactured.
It's a false choice.
You do not have to choose. You can actually combine the two into a highly effective practice, which the literature refers to as mindful listening.
And the science supports this integration beautifully. Research from Yale University specifically looked at this. They found that combining the two in a clinical practice they call music mindfulness targets neural and cardiac mechanisms to treat symptoms of depression and anxiety even more effectively than either practice can achieve on its own.
How does that actually work in the brain? Why does combining them create a compounded effect?
Think of music as training wheels for a bicycle. For someone whose mind is incredibly chaotic, someone who finds pure silence to be torture, music provides a predictable, soothing sensory anchor. It helps stabilize the autonomic nervous system.
It gives you something to hold on to.
Exactly. By using the emotional accessibility and physiological calming effect of music, you sharpen the focus required for deeper meditation. The training wheels keep you from falling over into a spiral of rumination, allowing you to actually pedal forward into mindfulness.
The researchers actually outline an experiment for you to try. Based on the sources, there is a progressive 15 to 20-minute routine that perfectly blends the immediate biological rewards of music with the long-term structural benefits of meditation. I'd love for us to break this down because it's something you could literally test out on your lunch break today.
It's very practical.
Step 1 is the warm-up. They suggest starting with 5 to 10 minutes of calm instrumental ambient music. And the data specifically notes using tracks tuned to 432 Hz or 440 Hz to lower anxiety markers. Ray, before we move on, what does 432 Hz actually mean? Is that a specific pitch or a tempo?
It refers to the tuning standard of the instruments. 440 Hz is the standard pitch that most Western music is tuned to, specifically the A note above middle C. But 432 Hz is a slightly lower alternative pitch standard.
Okay, got it.
Some of the clinical literature in our stack suggests that music tuned to 432 Hz resonates in a way that induces slightly slower heart rates and lowers blood pressure more effectively than standard tuning. So you put on an ambient track tuned to this frequency, but here is the critical part. You do not just put it on in the background while you check your email.
Where this is an active exercise.
You have to give it your absolute undivided attention. You notice the texture of the instruments, you notice the subtle nuances of the performance, and most importantly, you focus your attention on the space between the notes. In this step, the music is acting as your soft anchor. It gives your brain a sensory object to hold on to while your body physically relaxes.
Which brings us to step 2, the silent transition. This is another 5 to 10 minutes, and I imagine this is where the psychological friction really kicks in.
It is. Once your inner noise has quieted down a bit from the music, you gently fade the track out into total silence. Now, you must shift your focus from the external sound to the internal rhythm of your own breath. And your brain is probably going to rebel. It will feel annoying at first because you just took away the training wheels.
So what do you do when the thoughts start racing again?
As thoughts or emotions naturally arise, your only job is to observe them without reacting. Remember the basement analogy. You are now sitting in the climate control room. You are simply watching the machinery work, noticing the thoughts pop up, but you are not trying to change the temperature. You just let them pass.
And then we bring it home with step 3, which the researchers call integration. It's just a quick 2 to 3 minutes at the very end. You play one final uplifting track, but this time you use it to actively reflect.
Yes. You notice how your mind feels fundamentally different than it did 15 minutes ago? What most people find is that they experience that final piece of music so much more deeply. Because you've quieted the default mode network, there is far less mental chatter getting in the way. You are feeling the pure emotion of the song without being hijacked by your own distracting thoughts.
I love how actionable that is. It takes these dense clinical concepts and turns them into a daily protocol.
It is a phenomenal routine. If we had to synthesize everything we've discussed today into one ultimate, highly memorable summary, it would be a phrase pulled directly from the source material. It advises that you should use music for the state, meditation for the trait.
Music for the state, meditation for the trait. That perfectly encapsulates the functional alignment we talked about at the beginning. So as you go about your week, we want to remind you that for truly holistic well-being, your absolute best strategy is to embrace both. Cultivate a regular meditation habit to do the deep work to evolve your enduring personality traits, build structural emotional resilience, and quiet that draining mental battery.
And at the same time,
Exactly. At the exact same time, proudly and strategically use music for targeted emotional care. Use it for immediate stress relief and for pure, unfiltered daily joy.
this raises an important question, though, and it is a thought we want to leave you with today. We've established through the research that the music you love deeply informs your cultural identity. It connects you to your past, your deeply held memories, and your sense of belonging in the world. We've also established that a rigorous meditation practice systematically quiets your ego and dials down your brain's default mode network, fundamentally altering how you relate to your own identity.
So the two forces are almost working on your sense of self from opposite directions.
Exactly. So you have to wonder, as you build that rigorous meditation practice and your internal baseline fundamentally shifts towards stillness and non-attachment, will your taste in music completely change? Will those nostalgic, highly emotionally charged songs that used to define your identity lose their gripping emotional hold on you? Or will your newly quieted mind allow you to experience those exact same frequencies in an entirely new, transcendent way?
That is something fascinating to think about the next time you put your headphones on. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and we'll meet you back here next time as we dive into another stack of knowledge.